For today's tutorial, we're going to take a flat logo and we're going to add some layer style blending options to it to make it visually more pleasing. So here is the initial logo that we're going to use. It's flat, and at the end of the tutorial we're going to try to make it look like this. Okay? So to get started, what we need to do is locate that logo, and I'm just going to look it up on a Google search. So I'm just going to put in Indian motorcycle, and I'm going to put logo, and I'm going to click images. Now it doesn't have to be black, it just has to be a solid color, but let's use black. So here I am in the images section of Google. I'm going to hit tools. I'm going to filter it down the color to black and white, and I'm going to change the size to make it a little bit larger so we can work with a more crisp image. So here's the image we're going to use, this right here. So if I go in and I view it, there it is, and you can see it's a very high quality image. I'm going to right mouse click and just copy it to memory and begin a new Photoshop project. So I'll hit File, New. I'm going to select 3000 by 3000 because I know that the image is fairly large, but that container should handle it. So 3000 by 3000. Make sure you're in RGB. I'll hit Create. There's my blank project so far. All I have is a background. So next step is I'm going to copy the image that we've put in memory into this project, and just simply edit, paste, and there's the image. Okay, so we have to cut down the image a little bit. We don't need the word motorcycle in there, so we're going to edit this image slightly. Before I do that, I'm going to change the background color to something other than white, just so things show up a little bit more clearly. So I'm going to highlight that layer, the background layer, come up to Edit, hit Fill, and then I'm just going to put a light gray background. If you notice that the Indian logo still has a white background behind it, and that's because white is part of the image. So this is where we're going to do a little bit of editing. So next step is I'm just going to grab my Magic Wand tool. Magic Wand tool is really great for images that have hard edges like we have here, so I can easily select the borders. So I'm going to click in the white area. I have to select the layer. When I click in the white area, you notice that the everything that white is selected. So I'm going to hit Delete to get rid of that white. However, on the insides of some of the letters, it's still white, so we'll just click individually on those, hit delete, click individually, delete, 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 delete. Okay, so now we've isolated the major portion of the logo. We just have to erase the motorcycle part. So I'm just going to grab my eraser tool and just paint it out. So we've been left with just the logo itself. Okay, so now obviously you can see the gray background. Next step is let's take a copy of this layer that we just edited, and we can do it a couple of ways. We can hit Control J, or we can just drag the layer in the layers panel down to the new create layer icon, which I just did. So now we have two layers. I'm going to, the eyeball shuts off the layer, so I'm going to shut off the top layer. Could even shut off the bottom layer if I wanted, but I'm just going to leave it on for now. So now we're going to start doing some editing, or some text, or adding some blending mode and text effects to the images. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a border around the logo, and that blending option is called stroke. Now, how do we get to the blending options? It's Photoshop, so there are several ways to do everything. The easiest way is just to double click on the layer, and then the blending options window appears. Or you can right mouse click on the layer and hit the blending option at the top, and then there's also a menu that you can use. So to put a border around the logo, the option style is called stroke. Alright, so if we go into stroke, we have some control here. We can make the stroke bigger, we can make the stroke smaller. I think 10 will be good for this. You can put the stroke on the outside of the image, or the inside, or the center. Photoshop gives you lots and lots of options. Color choices, just hit the color box and you can pick any color you want. I'm defaulting to the color that I want, which is a reddish color. Then I'm going to hit OK. If you notice, there's a couple of dots here, and that's just because when we did the editing, we just missed a couple of the white areas. So I'm just going to take my eraser tool and clean that up. Okay. So right now we have just the logo with a border around it in red, and I'm just going to refer back to where we're going for the final project. So this is where we're at now. This is what we want to get to. So we've already put this red border in. Now we want to put a white border in on the inside, but we've already used our stroke. So that's why I created the other image. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to that other image, the other layer I should say, and we're going to change the color of this layer to white. So I'm on a Windows machine, I'm holding down a control key and I'm clicking on the window here in the layer panel, and as you can see, the marching ants have surrounded the image, and that's my selection. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go up to the edit menu, hit fill, and then fill it with white. So now, and then I'm going to deselect it so you can see it. So now the logo that was black is now white. Now Photoshop works top down, so whatever layer is on top takes precedence over the layers below. Let me show you why that's important. So I'm going to go to the middle layer where we put our red stroke, and we can see the black logo. But if we now turn on the layer that's above it, which is now white, it takes precedence over the previous layer. So what we really want to do is we don't want to have the logo fully white, we just want to have a border white. So I'm going to shut off the middle layer, and we're just going to work on the white layer for now. So what we really want to do is we want to kind of take out the inside color here and just leave a border. So how do we do that? So what we'll do is I'll hit the control key, I'll hit the image box again in the layer panel, I'll make my selection. What you have to do is you go up to the select menu options and go to modify and hit contract. So what that will do is it will contract the selection that you've made by the amount of pixels that you put in. In this case, I'm selecting 10 pixels, which just happens to match the stroke of the red that we put on the other layer, just to keep them even. So I'm going to hit OK, and you'll notice immediately that the selection kind of compressed. Okay, so now that it's compressed, what we really want to keep is this outer white border. So really, all we have to do is delete the selection that we've made. Okay, so I'm just going to hit delete, and I'm going to deselect so you can see what I did. So now we have another border on a separate layer. So let's see how that works. I'm going to go back now to the original base layer that we had with the stroke on it. Now let's see what we did. We actually have gone into another layer. We've changed the color to white, and now on the inside, because we contracted, if you remember, by 10 pixels, it should fit nicely right next to this red. So I'm going to turn on that layer, and now you see the white. So that effort that we did to isolate the white border really is starting to look nice. Okay, so let's continue and see how we can improve the image a little bit more. So I'm going to go back to this base layer here. I can shut off the top layer if I wanted. And I'm going to add a drop shadow. Okay, so now again, go back to your blending options. I'm going to select drop shadow. Alright, so drop shadow is basically the shadow you can put on the logo, and you have total control over the angles and the distances, and you have a lot of options here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and you also have the option of which way that the angle of the shadow goes. So I actually am going to see if I can get this to look a little bit cleaned up here. So I'm going to select a few options here, and I'm going to shut the window. So that's what the shadow looks like now. I could also turn it off so you can see what it looks like without. That's no shadow, with the shadow, and now I'm going to add the other layer on top with the white border around it, and it's starting to look pretty good. Again, let's remind ourselves what the original goal is. That's what we're trying to get to. So far we've done the red border, the white border, the shadow, and so we're going to move on to the next step here. So the next step is we want to add a pattern. Let's go back to the original. See in here, it's not a flat color, it's a pattern. So what we'll do is we'll go to this base layer here, go back into our blending options, and there's an option here for pattern overlay. Okay, so we'll select pattern overlay, we'll go into it. I think I have what I need selected, and I do. So I have it selected. It's defaulting. It should default to 100. I had it a little bit lower. So what we're going to do is, that looks a little too light, so I'm just going to drag the opacity down to something that that looks nicer. So again, it's to taste, so this is what I'm picking. So that's what we look like so far. Again, we can add a little bit more as far as text effects right now, and that's what we're going to do next. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the white layer, which just had the border. I'll shut off the middle layer so you can see. So here's what we have on the white border, which is the top layer, and we're going to add some text effects specifically to this outline. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a bevel to give it a little bit more of a 3D look. So I'm going to go again back into my blending modes. I'm going to go to bevel and emboss, and immediately you can see that it took the characteristics of whatever options were in the last time this was used. So I'm going to change this to outer bevel, and you can see it got a little bit flatter. You can see the shadow in there is nicer. Direction is up, and I'm just going to change. I'm going to change some of the options a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to make it 100 on which is usually the standard depth, and I'm going to change the size to 13. Okay, so that's what we have. We have a little bit more depth here. So I'm going to shut that off. I'm going to turn on the middle layer to see how that kind of fits in. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the middle layer, and now I'm going to show you what the white layer looks like now. So now, as you can see, it has a little bit more depth, starting to come off the screen a little bit, which is what we want. I'm going to go back in, change another blending mode. Now, since we have a separate layer, we can actually add a separate drop shadow, which is what we're going to do now. So I'm going to add another drop shadow. It has the drop shadow numbers from our last use, which is probably too much, so we're going to take them down a little. So I'm just going to play with the sliders, bring them down, let's say about 6 or 7 here. Okay, and then the spread, and you can see these changes. I move them. We'll bring that down to about 9. Okay, and then we'll just take the size down just slightly, okay, and we'll make that 21. Okay, so now we have, here's what it looks like without the effects, here's what it looks like with the effects, okay, and we'll do the same thing. We'll go down to the base layer, and we'll add in the effects on the white border, and this is what we're looking like now. So it really brings it off the screen. Last part is to change the color. We could leave it as is now, the color looks fine, but if we want to make it look like our final image, we have to change the inner color of the base layer, and we'll do that next. So again, back to our layer style blending options, and this time we're going to go into color overlay. Alright, color overlay, and it usually defaults to normal, and normal looks like this. It looks like you just went and used a crayon or magic marker. There's no definition. But we're going to change the blending mode just for this color, and there are about a couple of dozen blending modes you can use in Photoshop. I'm sure you can find tutorials on each of these. They're all interesting. You can just click through them if you want to see the different effects. But I'm going to use color, and now color basically is blending it in such a way that I can see that underlying pattern that we entered in there earlier. So I'm going to leave that as is right now, and I'm going to hit OK and go back to what our final product was supposed to be, and there we are. And it looks like we're pretty much there on the logo itself. So the last piece is to just put a gradient in to kind of, just clean up the final image. So we have a gray background. Now we're going to go to the background layer, and we're going to, actually I'm going to shut off this lock here to open up the blending options, and we're going to go into the gradient overlay, and I just happen to have it picked for this this kind of shiny background. I'll hit OK, and that completes the project. The last thing you want to do is maybe take your rectangular marquee tool, highlight around your image, and just crop it. So we'll do image crop, and there's your final image. I'll deselect it, and I'll show you our original. That's what we were after, and this is where we ended. So that's it for the tutorial right now. If you liked the tutorial, please leave a message. If you want to see something else, let me know. Anyway, that's the end of the tutorial for now. Hope you got something out of this. Thanks. Bye.